Today we're going to be talking to the CEO and Managing Director of Legacy Hotels and Resorts. They've just recently opened this Hilton hotel and we will be talking to them about supply chain and how it was reopening amidst COVID-19. So a very, very exciting topic and we hope you enjoy it. Thank you for listening. Hello, I'm Jennifer from Entegra. Today I'm joined by three very special guests. To my right, I have Andy Townsend, CEO of Legacy Hotels and Resorts. Here we have Jim Gordon, Managing Director. And we have Darren Eiley, who is an Account Director at Entegra. So welcome and thank you very much for joining us. Let's kick off by talking about Legacy Hotels and Resorts. It's coming up to your 16th year. How did that begin? Could you talk to us a bit about the background and how that started?
Jim and I have been working together since 2001 in McDonald's Hotels and Resorts. We had an opportunity to speak in the April of 2005 with a high net worth individual and a client at the time of McDonald's who had a couple of hotels under contract. We talked about our frustrations of corporate life and he put forward the opportunity to put ourselves forward and set up our own business. And in September of that year, with a little over £18 million of his money, we did the transaction of the first three Chorus hotels, as it was at the time, 2 hotels in from McDonald's, and we started off a portfolio of 5 hotels, and the rest, they say, is history. By far the biggest challenge that we're only really just breaking back on now is getting the right level of team members in place to give us the ability to trade at the occupancy level we've hit the ground running with. Jim's probably better placed to talk more to the opening of the existing portfolio and the operating hotels.
Yeah, obviously the pandemic hit very suddenly and we were forced to close our hotels at fairly short notice. We then had a number of problems in terms of keeping in contact with the team, motivating the team, making sure that our clients' assets were secure, etc. And then we had the opening up again on the July 4th in 2020. So we spent a lot of time talking to our people during that period, keeping in touch. We were having daily calls with general managers, Teams calls. We were having quizzes to try and keep them engaged, etc. And we worked hard to bring people back into the business. Employee anxiety was a major issue because they gone through a very difficult period and they were worried about coming back into the workplace, interacting with other staff and customers, etc. So we spent a lot of time doing that. It was fairly difficult reconfiguring the operation to operate in the post-COVID world, so PPE, enhanced cleanliness regimes, etc., etc. And we started off in a very difficult situation vis-à-vis funding and cash flow. So there was difficult decisions to be taken around job losses and equally difficult discussions to be had with our clients' banks in terms of forgiveness to allow us to accumulate cash to operate again. During that period we worked closely with Entegra in terms of our relationship with the supply chain, because that supply chain was facing similar challenges because they were primarily servicing the hospitality segment but had also gone into a period of closure and were slowly starting to wake up their business. So working with Darren, we made sure that we talked to the suppliers and there was ways that we were able to conduct our business that help the suppliers help us, and that seemed to work reasonably well when we were at good. We launched last summer at a pretty strong summer trading period before COVID wave 2 hit in the late period of 2020.
You mentioned the challenges around recruitment and staffing, given that it's eased recently. Is that something that continues to ease, or do you see that being a continuous challenge going into Christmas and the winter months?
It's still a major problem. We are, in most hotels, we have a live list of vacancies. We are seeing upward pressure on wages as a result of the supply-demand equation on labour, and in certain positions, typically kitchen, we are struggling to get skilled staff full stop. So we had 4 head chef vacancies in our estate. A few weeks ago we filled 2 of them, but still 2 live. But the sort of salaries we're having to pay to attract people to these positions are, in one example, 20 to 25% higher than previously we were having to offer. Strong wage inflation in the market, and we are set up, sadly, that we've got no alternative. We have to go out and pay those prices to get the staff.
Excellent, very interesting. And for those who are watching who aren't familiar with Entegra, I wonder if, Darren, you could give us just a brief overview of what benefit you feel Entegra can bring to an organisation like this one, and how you've brought value to Legacy Hotels and Resorts.
I think the critical bit for Entegra, particularly throughout the pandemic, was we were all in very uncertain times. It was difficult, there were daily challenges that were coming through in every different format. I think what we as a business tried to do was to try and remove some of that noise, some of that complexity for our clients, and try to support them by finding the solutions for them and be able to react quickly. So even if they had people in business on furlough, even if they had limited resource, even if they didn't know how to deal with the closures of their hotels or the reopening of their hotels, for us it was vital that we had a resource and support available to support them and give them tools and guidance and being able to react quickly to the challenges.
Excellent, thank you. And we know as a result of Brexit and COVID that over 1 million people have actually left the UK in the last 12 months, and this has had a major impact on hospitality and wider UK businesses, particularly around recruitment and supply chain. So have you found any problems in relation to that?
I think it's fair to say that we've seen the challenges in terms of the logistics solutions that get product to our hotels. So we've, again, working closely with Entegra, we've had to deal and reconfigure our operations to deal with some of these challenges. So we've had suppliers increasing minimum drop sizes, minimum order sizes, and seeking to reduce frequency of deliveries a week, and also product ranges to make sure they can maintain the integrity of the core service, which obviously we want to be there. We've also had to cope this summer with unprecedented demand in terms of volume. We're all aware that there's a limit to how many people are going abroad this year, so there's a strong leisure demand in the UK this summer, and that's pushing a lot of our hotels in the June, July, August period have run at close to 100% occupancy, and are therefore consuming more of these products and services than normal. So it's been incredibly difficult. The key thing is, however, that by and large the supply chain has remained resilient. We've had bumps in the road, but by and large the supply chain has remained able to deliver, and I'd like to thank Entegra for their efforts in that area.
I think it's really important to note on that the ethos around Entegra is very much a three-way partnership between supplier, client and ourselves. And I think some of the businesses have really struggled to deal with these challenges from supply chain. I think Legacy and many of our other clients have acknowledged that the suppliers are in equal pressure as they are, and actually the only way to get through these challenges have been to work collectively, and we've tried to support both the supplier and the client find common ground, and it might have been changing delivery days or minimum order values, but just trying to find solutions rather than becoming frustrated with the challenges we face.
No, definitely. I wonder, has distribution and logistics, for example, shortage of HGV drivers, been an issue for you in the last couple of months?
Not particularly. We've not seen the direct impact, but what we have seen though is suppliers coming forward with price increases because they're having to pay more in the market for these drivers. The example has been given of HGV drivers that were on a 45 to 55 grand salary range. That range has now moved up to 55 to 65 for our laundry supplier, and as such our laundry supplier has just come forward with a 70% price increase. So we have no option but to pass that on to our customers, so we're seeking to push our rates as much as possible to recover some of that. So that's just, there's a lot of inflation in the sector at the moment, product and services inflation and wage inflation, and as a business seeking to maintain its margin, we are trying to pass that on to the end customer.
Do you have any tips for any similar businesses in these kind of situations in spotting early signs of distress? What can they look out for?
Well, we are often asked by clients, or in some cases banks, to go in and do some reviews of businesses that they feel are in need of some support. And if you look at your typical owner-operated business, probably unbranded, some of the things that we see that are red lights for us are lack of focus on statutory compliance and health and safety, sometimes due to lack of funds, and an excessive focus on lower margin areas of the business like F&B at the expense of bedrooms, and no sign really of a proper structured marketing plan with a revenue management strategy to back that up to deliver the key rooms revenue, which is the one that will come down the highest to the bottom line. You often find in these places that the people running the hotels are almost frustrated frustrated restaurateurs, and as such have got this massive focus on the F&B side, but sometimes due to the way they were accounting for that F&B side, they think they make huge amounts of money. The reality is when you cut it down to brass tacks, they're not making any money and they're letting the rooms business suffer. So that's kind of some of the areas we sometimes see. Typically, alongside that comes a fairly poor financial control as well, and a lack of forward forecasting in terms of trading and cash flow, all contributing to a business that feels like it's stumbling around the dark, to be honest.
So looking to the future, we're very relieved to see that hospitality has reopened up. With that in mind, where is your key focus in the short and long term going forward?
We're in the business of hospitality. We're very lucky. We had a client group with us that enabled us to invest in the portfolio, both immediately prior to and indeed in some cases during the pandemic, both on existing portfolio and assets like this. But we've got two core elements really. We've got customers and we've got colleagues, the teams in the hotels. And the biggest challenge is staying focused on them. They've gone through their own traumas, some of which we don't see, their own personal lives and whatever's going on, the dynamic that they have within their lives. And that's been really hard. We've, like most businesses, had to make some really difficult and challenging decisions, particularly in the immediate period where we closed down. And as a result of which, unfortunately, we lost some good people. But we were all faced with uncertainty and some challenges to manage around at the time. But we are in the business of hospitality, we're in the business of looking after people, we're in the business of giving great experiences. It is a challenge at the minute, undoubtedly it is a challenge to do that, particularly as we just touched on with payroll and the lack of skilled workforce and such like. And interestingly enough, as we've come out of the pandemic, I think the customers' expectations have been such, because in some ways, by virtue of the price they've been paying, the supply and demand equation, they've somewhat forgotten there's been a pandemic, and the implications is that the supply chain and the payroll haven't yet managed to catch up at that stage. That's an interesting dynamic, and it's one that's quite difficult to manage. But they're the key bits really, is staying focused to the customer and remembering we're in the business of hospitality. And you can do a lot just by killing people with kindness. And that doesn't mean to say that the customer's always right. Sometimes they're not. But it does mean that we are in the business of trying to give people a good time. And if you stay sincere to that, you're not far off the mark, I guess.
You mentioned the team, and really are a vital part of what we're doing in the hospitality. And I think it really has been a tough few months for them out on the sector for all of us in different ways. One thing I've noted going around to your hotels is that your teams really are still very, very positive, very, very engaged. How have you managed to deliver that?
I'm honest, it's probably luck more than judgment. I don't think we're an oracle of great employerism or anything like that at all. I think we're pretty straightforward with people. I think we're pretty honest with people at that stage. We're very lucky. The people we've got around us, there's a lot of people who've been with us for a long time. And I always say two key things to people, and whether or not it disseminates around the business in its entirety, and whether or not some people always get an understanding of the answer. But I always say there's a distinct difference between seniority and superiority. There's a lot of people in this business that are much more superior than I am in certain topics that have to be delivered across the business. I might be the most senior person, but I'm not the most superior. And the other thing we say to our teams is that we'll be very open with people. You can ask me any question you like. There's a risk associated to asking a question that you might not like the answer, right? And the key bit that I do believe we live by is if you ask a question and we don't have the answer, we'll tell you we don't know the answer. And that doesn't mean to say you run off into a corner and start gossiping about, I wonder if you meant X or I wonder if you meant Y. And has that served us well? I don't know. Businesses talk about cultures and everything else. I don't know. It's nice to hear the feedback. The reality is it's driven at local teams, driven by the general manager and the leadership that sits there.
I think it's been crystal clear in the hospitality sector. So many people have done that. It's been amazing to see.
Lastly, I wanted to ask, how do you see the benefit of Entegra's procurement savings benefiting your wider business?
Well, we've worked with Entegra now for all of the time the legacy's been in existence, and 4 years really before that, when I was responsible for procurement at McDonald's Hotels. To me, it's never been really just about the procurement. I mean, Entegra have got a fantastic team of people that are full-time focused on procurement for the hospitality sector, as well as being part of now the wider organisation that is Sodexo. But to me, the real added value for our business is the operational support, which sets Entegra apart, because there are a number of aggregators out there that will pull your procurement spend together and go to suppliers and say, I can deliver you X million pound to spend if you give me these prices. You know, that's a particularly difficult thing to do. Where Entegra have invested and continue to invest in this operational support, so we're supporting the chefs either on site or remotely on the operational side, and crucially the systems which Entegra have heavily invested in the last 4 or 5 years, that gives us menu costing, banks of dishes, allergen, compliance, etc. I mean, I've always viewed Entegra as a true business partner.
So I'd firstly like to say thank you very, very much for joining us today. It's been very insightful, and I'm sure that everybody watching will find it equally as insightful. So thank you very much for your time. It's very much appreciated. We really value the relationship we have with you. And thank you everyone for watching. Goodbye.